Healing and Human Potential podcast, Unlocking the Power Within. It was a crisp autumn morning when Emma first discovered the Healing and Human Potential podcast. She had always been a seeker, constantly on the lookout for new ways to improve her life, to heal from past wounds, and to grow into the best version of herself. Little did she know, this podcast would be the spark that ignited a profound transformation within her. Emma had spent the last few years battling a lingering sense of disconnection. She was successful in her career, had a solid circle of friends, and was physically healthy, yet, deep inside, she felt something was missing. A sense of peace, of wholeness, had deluded her for so long. She struggled with the remnants of childhood trauma, carried an unhealed heart from past relationships, and longed for a deeper connection to her own potential. One evening, after another day of feeling disheartened, Emma decided to search for something that might help. She had heard people talk about podcasts, how they could be a great way to learn and grow. She sat at her desk and typed Healing and Personal Growth podcast into the search bar. That's when she stumbled upon Healing and Human Potential podcast. The title alone intrigued her, and the tagline, "Discover the boundless capacity for growth and healing within you," resonated deeply. With a click, she was transported into a world of insight, inspiration, and transformative teachings. Each episode featured interviews with world-renowned experts in various fields, from emotional healing and energy work to neuroscience and mindfulness. The hosts, a pair of compassionate individuals who had dedicated their lives to helping others, created a safe space for listeners to explore new ways of thinking and being. The first episode she listened to was about the science of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and reorganize itself. Emma was captivated as she learned that our brains are not static, that they have an incredible capacity to heal and grow, even in the face of past traumas. The idea that she could rewire her own thought patterns, overcome limiting beliefs, and heal emotional wounds felt revolutionary. For the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. As weeks passed, Emma eagerly tuned into every new episode. One episode introduced the concept of mindfulness and meditation as tools for healing, while another explored the power of forgiveness in releasing past pain. Through each guest and topic, Emma began to peel back the layers of her own life. She realized that she had been holding on to old grudges and self-limiting beliefs that were keeping her stuck. The podcast encouraged her to embrace vulnerability, to practice self-compassion, and to trust that she had the power to heal. It wasn't long before Emma started applying the wisdom she gained from the podcast into her daily routine. She began meditating each morning, focusing on her breath and letting go of the racing thoughts that had once dominated her mind. She started journaling her feelings, acknowledging her pain, and allowing herself to feel without judgment. Slowly but surely, Emma felt herself shedding the emotional weight that had held her back for so long. One particular episode, in which the host discussed the concept of soul purpose, had a profound effect on Emma. She had always wondered about her purpose, why she was here, and how she could make a meaningful impact in the world. The guest on the show shared a powerful perspective, that our soul purpose isn't something we need to find, but something we need to create through the choices we make and the actions we take. This revelation shifted Emma's thinking. She realized that her potential wasn't something distant or unreachable. It was right here, in her everyday life, waiting to be activated. The podcast also brought Emma into a community of like-minded individuals. She joined online discussions and attended virtual workshops, where she could share her journey and learn from others who were on similar paths. It was in these spaces that she found a deep sense of belonging, a reminder that she was not alone in her struggles or her quest for growth. Together, they celebrated each other's victories and supported one another through the challenges. Months passed, and Emma's life began to change in ways she had never expected. She felt more grounded, more at peace, and more connected to her true self. Her relationships deepened, her confidence grew, and she started to pursue creative endeavors that she had long put aside. She realized that the healing journey was not a destination but a lifelong process, a journey that had no end, only continual growth and expansion. One day, as Emma sat outside, soaking in the warmth of the sun, she reflected on how far she had come. The pain that had once felt insurmountable no longer had a hold on her. She had uncovered a wellspring of strength, wisdom, and potential within herself that she never knew existed, and it all began with a simple podcast that invited her to open her heart and mind to the possibility of healing. The Healing and Human Potential podcast had become more than just a source of knowledge for Emma. It had become a lifeline, a companion on her journey to becoming the person she was always meant to be. She realized that healing wasn't just about mending the broken parts, it was about unlocking the full capacity of her humanity and stepping into her true potential. And now, she was ready to share that message with the world, to help others find their own path to healing and growth. As the podcast continued to grow, so did Emma's sense of purpose. She began to dream of one day hosting her own healing and human potential podcast, one where she could share her story, the lessons she had learned, and the power of self-transformation. But for now, she knew her journey was just beginning, and each episode was another step toward a life filled with endless possibilities. And so, as the next episode of the Healing and Human Potential podcast began, Emma closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the immense gratitude for all the healing and growth that had come into her life. The journey had been long, but with each moment, she was uncovering a deeper truth, that the potential for healing and greatness was already inside of her all along. The next chapter. It had been a year since Emma first found the Healing and Human Potential podcast, and her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined. What had started as a simple search for healing had evolved into something much deeper, a journey of self-discovery, growth, and connection to her higher purpose. But even though she had made tremendous strides, Emma knew she was only scratching the surface of what was possible. Her journey was ongoing, and the more she learned, the more she realized how much there was to explore. One day, as she sat sipping tea by her window, she reflected on the powerful changes that had occurred in her life. She had started a daily meditation practice, developed healthier habits, and cultivated a sense of gratitude and mindfulness that permeated her day. Her relationships had improved, especially her bond with her family and close friends, and she had become more attuned to the subtle energies within herself and others. But there was still a whisper in her heart, a call for something more, a deeper level of healing, a higher purpose, and the next phase of her growth. As if in answer to her thoughts, Emma's phone buzzed with a new notification. It was from the Healing and Human Potential podcast. The title of the episode caught her attention, Embracing the Infinite, Living Your Life's Purpose to the Fullest. The podcast episode felt like a sign, a message guiding her toward what came next. The hosts, as always, spoke with such wisdom and clarity, weaving together the themes of personal healing, expansive growth, and the power of living in alignment with one's sole purpose. But this episode was different. This time, the conversation delved deeper into the concept of self-actualization, the idea that healing is not just about overcoming obstacles but about fully realizing and stepping into the highest version of yourself. The guest on this episode, Drive, Harper Monroe, was a renowned psychologist and spiritual teacher who specialized in helping individuals unlock their fullest potential. Drive, Monroe spoke about the importance of pushing past the boundaries of self-limiting beliefs and embracing a life of courage, creativity, and service to the world. Her words hit Emma's soul in a way that nothing had before. True healing, Drive, Monroe said, is not just about fixing what's broken. It's about realizing that you are not broken, you are whole, complete, and infinitely capable of growing into the highest expression of who you are meant to be. The key to unlocking your potential is to trust in your own divinity, to move beyond fear, and to align with the truth of who you are. Emma sat in silence, absorbing Drive, Monroe's words. It was as though a veil had been lifted, and she could see with perfect clarity. For so long, she had been focused on healing the wounds of her past, on fixing herself, but now, she understood that healing was not just a process of restoration, it was a process of evolution, of tapping into a deeper sense of self and stepping into the infinite possibilities that awaited her. In the days that followed, Emma felt a shift within her. She began to see the world through a different lens, one that was full of opportunity, not just for healing but for thriving. She felt the stirring of something greater than herself, a sense of purpose that beckoned her forward, and an innate desire to help others experience the same transformation she had gone through. She began to feel that her role in the world was to guide others on their own healing journeys, to empower them to step into their highest potential, just as she had been guided. It was during a quiet walk through the park that the idea first crossed her mind. What if she could create something of her own, a platform where people could learn, grow, and heal together? Something that combined all the wisdom she had gained from the podcast with her own experiences and insights, a place where others could explore their full human potential and begin to heal on every level, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. As she pondered this, She felt a sense of excitement bubbling up inside her. Emma had always been passionate about storytelling, about creating spaces where people could connect, share, and learn. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to take the next step. Maybe it was time for her own podcast. The idea of launching her own podcast was both exhilarating and terrifying. She was still in the midst of her own growth journey, and the thought of putting herself out there felt vulnerable. But she realized that vulnerability was the key. It was through embracing her own imperfections, her own healing process, that she could truly help others. Emma began to sketch out her ideas, what her podcast would be called, what topics she would cover, and the guests she would invite. She envisioned a space where people could hear stories of resilience, wisdom, and transformation. It would be a place where guests shared their personal journeys of healing and human potential, and listeners could walk away with practical tools, insights, and inspiration to apply in their own lives. The more she thought about it, the more she knew that this was the next step in her own evolution. Her podcast would be a platform for others to heal, grow, and discover their own potential, just as the Healing and Human Potential podcast had done for her. Soon, Emma took the leap. She reached out to her network of healers, thought leaders, and spiritual teachers and began recording the first few episodes of her own show, which she decided to call The Infinite You, Healing and Unlocking Your True Potential. The process was exhilarating, and although there were challenges, technical difficulties, moments of self-doubt, and the occasional imposter syndrome, Emma knew that this was her path. She was stepping fully into her potential, embracing her own journey of growth, and sharing her story with others. As the first episode of her podcast launched, Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was only the beginning. She knew that there was still much to explore, to learn, and to experience, but she was no longer afraid. She had embraced her true self and was ready to help others do the same. The podcast that had changed her life had now inspired her to create something new, a space where healing and human potential could continue to unfold for countless others. And as the world tuned into The Infinite You, Emma realized something profound. Healing and human potential weren't just abstract ideas. They were living, breathing forces that had the power to transform the world, and by stepping into her own potential, she was helping to ignite that spark in others. The journey was just beginning. The first month of the Infinite You Collective was a profound experience for both Emma and its members. The theme for the month was embracing self-love, a concept that was foundational to her own journey of healing. Emma hosted a live workshop where she guided the community through a process of releasing self-criticism and cultivating compassion for oneself. The members responded with enthusiasm, sharing their stories and engaging in discussions that felt raw, vulnerable, and empowering. Each week, Emma facilitated group coaching calls, where she helped members work through specific challenges related to their personal growth and healing. She witnessed incredible breakthroughs as people overcame deep-rooted fears, healed from past traumas, and began to embrace their own worthiness. The conversations that happened in the group were powerful, as members encouraged one another, offered advice, and shared their wisdom. One particular story stood out to Emma. A woman named Sarah had joined the collective after hearing about it on the podcast. She had struggled with deep feelings of unworthiness and shame for most of her life, stemming from an abusive relationship she had left years ago. Sarah shared her story during a live session, and Emma felt an overwhelming sense of compassion for her. As Sarah spoke, Emma could see the immense courage in her eyes. Over the following weeks, Sarah began to shift. She started journaling about her experiences, practicing self-compassion, and even speaking openly about her struggles in the group coaching sessions. The transformation was subtle at first, but it was undeniable. Emma watched as Sarah moved from a place of deep pain and self-doubt to a place of strength, self-acceptance, and joy. It was one of the most moving experiences Emma had ever witnessed. The success of the Infinite You Collective was beyond anything Emma had expected. More members joined, and the community grew stronger with each passing month. As the collective flourished, Emma's podcast also continued to expand, with her listener base reaching new heights. The two platforms worked in harmony. While the podcast provided insights and inspiration, the collective offered a space for active engagement and transformation. Yet, even with all the success, Emma still knew she was only just beginning. There was more work to be done, more people to reach, and more healing to be shared. She knew that her mission was bigger than she had originally imagined, that the true power of healing and human potential lay not only in individual transformation but in the collective awakening of humanity. One night, as Emma sat alone in her office, reflecting on how far she had come, she smiled. The journey that had started with a single podcast episode had evolved into something truly life-changing, not just for her, but for so many others. And in that moment, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had unlocked a potential within herself she never knew existed. She had created a space for others to do the same, and as she closed her eyes, she knew that the healing and human potential she had once sought for herself was now rippling out into the world, creating a wave of transformation that would continue to grow and expand. The journey wasn't over, it was just getting started.